Hello, beautiful people. We are going to be trying something today called flipping the classroom. And flipping the classroom means that we record the mini lesson that has the information that you need to use on a video, and you watch that for homework. So you kind of learn the mini lesson on your own, but with us in video at home, so that when you come in next class, we're ready to just jump right in and apply it to your writing. So in your last class, you began writing your editorials using the organizational structure that you had come up with. Now that you've got your first draft put together, we're ready to go back and refine it. And what we want to focus on for this next lesson is transitions. Using transitions as part of organization to guide your reader. And transitions are like tour guides. Without them, you're just kind of wandering around through your ideas. But we want to use them to take your audience by the hand and lead them through your ideas clearly. So what I want you to think about is a concrete example. Let's imagine that you're trying to convince your parents to let you stay out a little bit later than they have in the past. They've had a curfew for you, you've done a pretty good job following it, and this time you want to ask them if you can stay out a little bit later. So which one of the following arguments would sound more convincing? I always come home on time, I want to stay out later this time. Or this one, since I've always come home on time in the past, I can be trusted to stay out a little bit later this time. Hopefully there's just something in you that feels like the second one is a bit more convincing, but you might not be sure why. So let's take a look at what makes this one a little bit more convincing. You can see that I highlighted the word since, and that is a transition sentence starter. When you start out by saying, since I have always come home on time in the past, then what you're implying is that what comes next is what you should be able to do now. What's the next logical step? I've always come home in the past, so I can be trusted to stay out a little bit later this time. When you use a transition sentence starter like this, it just explains a little bit more about the connection to your parents in this case. It helps them see a little bit more about why these things are related and why being on time in the past matters. So you have your argument, which is that you always come home on time in the past, and that directly supports your position that you should be able to stay out a little bit later this time. When you use a transition, it does the thinking for your audience, kind of in a way, so it makes it crystal clear for them. Here's the trap that we've noticed some of you guys are falling into, and it's totally common and normal. You think the connection is obvious. You're the one who's spent a ton of time thinking about your editorial topic, you've come up with your arguments, your supporting evidence, you're so close to this issue that in your head it seems crystal clear, it seems obvious how these arguments support your position. But you can never assume that your audience is going to figure it out. In our previous lesson, we talked about organization. And really what we walked away from that lesson understanding is that regardless of your method of communication, whether it's writing, whether it's dance, whether it's music, if your ideas are organized, that means that they're clear. And if they're clear, they can be powerful. If your audience has to spend time trying to figure out where you're going with this information, it loses its power. Let's do a concrete example. Let's practice this, okay? And the question we're always having in our head is, what's the relationship between the arguments and your position? You're always going back and you want to make sure that that's crystal clear. So let's imagine I'm writing an editorial and my position is that people should not buy fur clothing, okay? So I have three arguments to support this position. Argument one, the animals are treated poorly. Argument two, many animals have to be killed in order for you to have that beautiful fur coat. And argument three is that there are many substitutes for fur today. There's Gore-Tex, there's down, there's nylon, and there's other materials that do a better job of keeping us warm than fur. And the fourth argument, you're just never going to look as cool as this guy. So let's take a look one by one. A reminder, our position is that people should not buy fur clothing, and the first argument is that the animals are treated poorly. So the first sentence in our paragraph that's going to give evidence to support this would be something like this. If you buy fur, then you're contributing to the poor treatment of animals. An if-then statement shows a direct connection between the action that you're making, buying fur, and the poor treatment of the animals. So from here, I can go on in my paragraph and talk about the poor living conditions, the poor diet, the lack of freedom, and all the other gruesome things that happen to these animals while they're waiting to become your coat. And since I've started with this sentence, I've made it very clear for my reader the direct connection between their action and then all of these examples I'm going to give in my paragraph. Let's take a look at the second argument. Again, our position is that people should not buy fur clothing. The argument is that many animals are going to be killed to make that beautiful fur coat. So if we take a look at the sentence that could start off that paragraph, what about something like this? In order for you to wear that lovely fur coat, many animals had to lose their lives. Again, you see how that simple little transition starter shows the connection. It makes it clear. It's so little, you guys. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's just that extra clarity that's going to show that connection between the issue that you're talking about, being able to wear fur, and the argument that you're making, that so many animals had to lose their lives. So for our last argument, why people should not wear fur clothing, is that there are so many more substitutes today for fur. So the way we could start off that paragraph is by saying something like this. Historically, killing animals was required to survive harsh winters, but today, other materials are better at meeting this need. So you can see that I've highlighted in yellow those transitional phrases that link these two ideas together. And you're actually kind of making a concession in this kind of a statement. Yep, in the past we needed fur. It's how we needed it to survive, but not anymore. And then you can go into the rest of this paragraph and talk about the materials that I mentioned earlier, like Gore-Tex and down and nylon and all these other materials that actually do a better job of keeping us warm to support your position, that we shouldn't be buying fur because it's not even the best material anymore. Okay. Here's a collection of possible sentence starters for transitions. You don't need to start every single paragraph of your editorial with a transition. But anytime you move to the next argument, you do need to transition, and you need to show the direct connection between your position and the argument that you're using to support it. So you may want to pause the video right now and take a minute and just read over these transition sentence starters. This is the takeaway message from this entire mini lesson. This is what we want you to remember. Make it clear. How does the argument support the position? Remember, organized communication is more clear, and the clearer you can be, the more powerful your ideas are, and the more you can persuade and influence your audience, regardless of the method of communication you're using.